March 20th, 2026. Hello, I'm John Michael Chambers, and welcome back to Special Report with Sheila Home. This show is published monthly at jmcbroadcasting.com and is distributed across all the major platforms. We have an announcement here. Derek Johnson is joining me on March 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern, all new Patriot Q&A Power Hour, basically 1 hour in our private room. Derek will be there. I'll be your host to answer your questions for 1 solid hour. Mark your calendar, March 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern. And to get set up and learn more about that, visit jmcbroadcasting.com, and we look forward to seeing you there. All right, Sheila is a deep researcher and is grounded in her Christian faith. She's a prolific author of 19 books, including An Eternal Plan and For the Sake of America. It's a series. She's also a public speaker, national speaker at events in the past, such as Reawaken America Tour with Clay Clark and General Flynn and Eric Trump and the rest of the team. Her journey and teachings have led her to many countries on nearly every continent. She's done thousands of interviews and is a coveted guest by many of the popular podcasters. Sheila has become an expert on many topics, including the Georgia Guidestones, and continues to weigh in on the current state of affairs unfolding here in America and throughout the world, sharing both her insights and wisdom through a spiritual, patriotic, and biblical lens. So welcome back, Sheila Home. Good to see you.
It's good to be with you.
All right. You know, there's a lot going on. What I'd like to do, I have just a couple of items that I really would like you to weigh in on, some of the events that have transpired since we met last time. And to our audience, we'll be covering point 43 of the outline to destroy America and the counterpoints to that as the show progresses. So stick around for that. Let's take a look at this. Let's listen. Let's listen to the voices in this choir to our producer. Wow. So Sheila, can you talk with us about what we've just listened to?
Well,
Who is
that's
that and where
a
is that? Do you
combination
know?
of our military. The commitment of our military to the Lord overall is so strong. That's what we've talked about before, and that's what happened in all the wars. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in point 43 tonight, about the Civil War, because our guys, if you give a believing man a cause, they'll go fight for somebody else's family if there's a good cause to go and do it, because that's what a believing man does. And that's how they've entered into all of these different wars. And that's what these 45 points took us into, is all these wars because of that. And that's why this is such a profound thing. At the exact same time that President Trump is calling our entire nation to prayer on May 17, but every day. And then from May 17 to July 4 for our 250th. There's a reason he's doing this and rededicating America as the Pilgrims dedicated America to the Lord overall. That's what we talked about on previous interview with those 3 eclipses, where he put his name across our nation. In those 3 eclipses, he signed his name on our nation. And so we're doing this and rededicating. No other president has ever called the entire nation to prayer or to come together to rededicate America back to the Lord overall. So we'll get a little bit into that tonight. And that's why I was just so grateful that that was shared this week, because that's a brand new video of guys that just came together from all the different services. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful rendition of that song.
Yes, it is. So May 17th is going to be quite a pivotal day. And where is we chatted briefly before we came on? That's going to be at the mall where the president calls the nation to prayer. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It's going to be in the mall in DC on May 17.
Well, that's going to change things. That's very strategically placed before July, as June and July will be a series of events. We chatted about a date in June. What's happening there? June
June
27th, I think you
27, I've been
mentioned.
asked to speak. And May 17 to July 4 is 50 days. And that's Jubilee. And then the 51st day, which is another 17 number, 51. And that is where they're saying the year of celebration. Remember when he said we're going to have fireworks if you want to every day for the 250th year? Why is this so important?
Mhm.
Cultures don't exist 250 years. 250 years after Christ, Constantine put us in this crazy mixture on the venerable day of the sun, worshiping the sun god Baal, whose name starts with a
Mhm.
capital G on God, a capital L on Lord, capital L on Master of the Universe. We thought those were the names for our Lord, but they're not. And so we've been deceived. And so I'm praying that a lot of this gets resolved with what we're doing for May 17 to bring people to the truth and fellowship as believers, helping each other, because that's what it's all about. It's not about gathering to hear a little part of a phrase out of the Bible. It's not what it's about. And it's not about money. It's never been about money. It's been about seeing to the needs of the fatherless. That's the only undefiled religion. So we're living in a very powerful time when we could turn this entire nation around with the help of the Lord overall.
Absolutely. And we've all been talking about in this movement for many years that this is a spiritual battle between good and evil. So it would only be appropriate and make all the sense in the world for the president to trigger this on May 17th, and the events surrounding July 4th as well. And the power of that unity in prayer is really going to tilt the scale quite a bit and give us the push and momentum we need as we form this golden age of America and golden age for humanity, if you will. I want to talk with you about,
Mhm.
if you can, at any level you care to speak about, whether it's a 40,000-foot view or coming in more granularly, if you choose. But how would you summarize? Because we see what the president's doing. Of course, the military, the White Hats, but the president, the commander in chief, we had the operation in Venezuela, hugely successful, and now I understand Maduro's singing like a canary. Then we have Iran unfolding right now. Dare I say the Straits of America over there, and then we have Cuba. Cuba
Mhm.
imploding upon itself. They kind of helped us take care of themselves already without having to go as aggressive as we did, say, in Iran or Venezuela, at least to date. What is your what is a common thread that you see as a strategy, if you will? If you were with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you were in the war room with the Commander in Chief, and they're laying out the strategy for Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba. What is a common thread? Why these three countries? What do you see happening here?
Well, it's more. Um, it's more than Maduro. It's more than Cuba. It's more than Iran. It's and to me, it's all connected as a network, showing us really who is England. That's the whole, to me, the what's going on in the shadows, because England has been the kingpin and control kingdom wise over everything, over Canada, over Australia, over New Zealand, over Israel, over they've been in control of all of this. And so I see all of this coming to peace. I see us coming out of war and going to the Department of War. By returning to the Department of War, we've changed the whole atmosphere in America. A lot of people still don't
Yeah,
understand it. They think we're going to war with Iran. This is not a war. This is not a war. What's
correct.
being revealed about Iran is not a war. They're willing to slaughter their own people in the streets. What does that tell you about any other nation as to what they want to do to us? Because if they'll do that to their
Hmm.
own people, and that's what they're doing, same as Ukraine, that's what they're doing. So the president's exposing and revealing all of this globally. And what's so exciting, Cuba said they will not be intimidated. And now today they just caved and said, now we're going to be negotiating with the United States of America. Cuba, after everything we've been through with
Yeah.
them. Iran wanted to come and is calling about now who can we put in charge, because they know that if they put another one in from that Revolutionary Guard, They're going to just keep being eliminated because we're not going to allow them to be over those people. And people go, well, it's not up to us. Guys, they're killing Americans. They've been killing Americans, killing soldiers, bombing our guys, bombing ships, and killing guys knowing the side of the ship that all the bunks are on, and killing people in Yemen. They're killing people all over. What they said was the proxies. And I'm not as aware. This might be something that's more prone to something for you, John, is that they're saying all the proxies that are involved in this, we're clearing it all up. We're clearing it up for everybody. And now by clearing up on the Strait of Hormuz, and I think we have some information on that. We have some information about Cuba doing this today. So if we can bring some of those things up, if this is the appropriate time to go over, because they're all connected. They've always been connected against us. You know, to me, it's healing, because we're still fighting the Spanish-American War. We didn't understand. That's what Mexico's about. That's what Cuba's about. That's why Cuba's still thinking they can control over Venezuela and Colombia and all of Latin America. Why? Because the Spaniards are the ones that are behind all of this. So Cuba, you had to get permission from Venezuela and Colombia to do anything in the world, even in your own country. You couldn't get a driver's license in Venezuela unless you got the approval from Cuba. Huh? What? How are they the head of these nations? So now the Cuba, this just happened today. Now they're going to start cooperating and negotiating. This side of the
How
world, the
about that?
Western Hemisphere, has never been cleared up since the Spanish-American War more than 125 years ago. 1898 is when the big Battle of San Juan happened. San Juan Hill.
Well, you know, I've lived in Florida. I've certainly been to Key West. Went to that little the most southern tip it's labeled in the United States. Whether it is or isn't, I don't know. But you know, you look across the water, 90 miles, you're in Cuba.
Yeah.
And as a young boy, of course, I recall, you know, I didn't understand it all, but I was around during JFK and the whole issue there with Cuba. And it's always bothered me all these years as an adult. Here's this little island that we could step on like a bug and put it to bed. And of course, none of the presidents have. And they took JFK off the map. And here we are, again, go back to the memes that are quite popular on social media. JFK, the starter, Donald J. Trump, the finisher. That's where we are right now. And it's, you know, just on the personal level, because I lived down in Florida on and off for many years, have a lot of Cuban friends and different friends from different parts of Central and South America. But I can tell you, when the Cuba mission is complete, and it will be, it's going to be an extraordinary celebration for these people, and it's going to be, you know, I see an island paradise. And once the mess is cleaned up and so forth, but Cuba's always had tremendous potential to be, even, you know, they got what, sugarcane, I guess, but even a tourist destination. You're going to see a lot of things happening down there, and trade can come back, and we don't have to have people jumping in rickety made rafts to jetty across all that dangerous water, hoping to land on our soil. I'm on that level. I'm just very happy to see what's going to be the result of this. But on a political side, Cuba, as I understand it, Sheila, wasn't it Cuban security that was supposedly protecting Maduro? And that didn't work out so well, right? I mean, we got in and out of there in 5 minutes. But yeah, you've got Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba. And I want to pedal back to some comments you made about Iran. In addition to the things you stated, and I know our audience knows this, but hey, folks, death to America. Does that chant sound familiar to you over the years, coming from loudly from Iran? Sure does, even recently. How about 2 assassination attempts that we know of as of recent against President Trump? They put a threat to kill the president of the United States. Death to America, they've been chanting for years. All the predecessors to Donald Trump did nothing about this. In fact, Obama gave, as we know, 1.6, 1.7 billion in cash, and Biden administration gave 6 billion, maybe not in cash, but 6 billion. And it wasn't, I've said this before on other shows, it wasn't, you know, for the Iranian Ayatollah and his people to feed hungry children in third world nations. That stuff is to keep them as the largest state sponsor of terror, keeping the world in fear over a nuclear threat. So those that don't believe we've gone in there for just cause, that's just that issue. Then there's some of the other issues you've raised. Yeah, I'm glad we're there. And you're right, Sheila, it's not a war. Epic Fury is an operation. So are the rest of these missions. And we're realigning the geopolitical landscape, paving the way for, in my opinion, you couple that with the no longer funding the UN, the formation of the Board of Peace. You got a lot of big dots being connected here. Folks, to our audience, can't you see what's happening? Take your mind off the National Enquirer and mainstream news talking points about Trump going into war. And he's actually ending endless wars by making these moves, in my opinion. I just had to get that off my chest, but
no, it goes deeper. John, you're hitting on the pulse of all of it, because why do we have Sharia law in almost all of our states now and nobody knew? And there's 2 new mosques being built every month in Texas. Who would have ever guessed?
Wow.
Because Texas was always going to be the strong state out of all the states in America. So, but they were behind this because they want control of us. It's all against our Constitution. No, nobody dealt with it. Nobody dealt with it. Now it's all being exposed, and now they want to blame Trump. Trump is just trying to resolve it and finish it. He's taking care of business, is what I've told people. We're not at war. We're taking care of business because it's been allowed to grow and expand to the point where we've got Sharia law in our states, and it's completely against our Constitution.
Without question.
Our founding
and you know
is
what?
not Sharia law.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. You got some of these leftist women out there making comments like, women in Iran are better off than women in America. I mean, this is just complete lunacy. And at the end of the day, the president, of course, constantly takes the arrows for us, doing so now, being called a warmonger and all the different things that they're saying, even within our movement. But you know what? You know this, Sheila, and I know this, that as you fast forward, whatever the period of time that may be, and it's a lot sooner than people think, it'll all make sense. And Donald Trump, President Trump, well, he's a hero in my book, but he'll be a hero the world over once you profit from camaraderie and unity by not having war versus profiting by having war by the United Nations and others and the banksters that keep us in perpetual war. I want to talk about Israel. Allow me a few minutes, Sheila, to kind of set this up. I've got a piece I'd like to read and run through that I think will stimulate quite a bit of value and thought and insights from you that I think our audience would like to hear. So Michael, let's put up the image of the Israeli flag. Sheila will be, well, here, good. She's still on the screen with me. Thank you. It begins and ends with Israel. We are living in extraordinary times, and many might not realize that these events are deeply rooted in biblical prophecy. Everything begins and ends with Israel. And this has been discussed in one long sentence in the Q board back in the day: save Israel for last. So that's why I'm spending a moment on this, and we'll have Sheila weigh in from any perspective she cares to. The new system we'll talk about versus the old legacy system. The new system is ready, but we can't move forward without dismantling the old legacy system first. That has to be done first. So this old system has been built on centralized control and manipulation and is on the brink of collapse, as we see happening in Venezuela, Cuba, and Iran, for example. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, all roads going back to England. So the chain reaction, political and economic turmoil is what we're looking at. Conflicts in the Middle East often lead to widespread instability, affecting global markets and political alliances. So what we're seeing here is the collapse of the centralized systems. The legacy system built on centralized banking and political control, again, England, will start to crumble as its core, Israel's influence, is disrupted. Now, I'm going to say things that people may disagree with or may be controversial, but I'm going to bring it to the forefront. There's a ripple effect. This turmoil will create a ripple effect, as we see it, across the globe, affecting financial markets, governments, and everyday lives. The collapse will pave the way for decentralized systems and new technologies such as blockchain, QFS, and crypto to take center stage. So why Israel? Israel plays a crucial role as the epicenter of global influence. It's known as the Rothschilds' banking headquarters. Israel has significant sway over the British Empire. In turn, the British Empire controls the Federal Reserve, Washington, D.C., and other major financial institutions worldwide. So the biblical connection, these events echo biblical prophecies, where Israel is often depicted as the center of major global shifts. And in times of great change, like right now, Israel's role, once again, is pivotal, making the beginning and end of significant eras, ERAS, eras. So, understanding the times, I'm going to conclude this in a moment, Sheila. To truly grasp the magnitude of what is unfolding, it's essential to recognize these signs and understand their implications. The dismantling of the old system isn't just a political or economic shift, it's a transformation of global proportions rooted in ancient prophecies and leading us into a new era. And it is biblical. And of course, as we mentioned in the beginning of the show, May 17th, call to prayer by President Trump at the monument, and other events to follow. Any comments at all about what I've just kind of walked us through in that bit about Israel? Because all roads lead to Israel.
Well, and they haven't been free either. They were the state of Israel created by the Rothschilds in 1948, and were the State of Israel Inc. Renewed their corporate registration in London. It was held in London every February. And that is something our president brought forward in September. He was in England. He was in the King's carriage. He didn't go stay at Windsor. He wasn't entertained at Buckingham Palace. Everything was coding that everything is changing. When he came home, the first appointment he had was to meet with Bibi about the state of Israel. And no one has ever called it the state of Israel before publicly. It's always been Israel, but Israel are the tribes of Jacob Israel. They're not a piece of land somewhere because they've been gone since 721 BC. So they're not, the Israelites have not been in Israel since several hundred years before Christ. And so what we're dealing with is tough for people to understand because they think Israel is the tribes of Israel and they think that location is their location. And when people say we're Israelis related to Bibi Netanyahu, I was just talking to someone in November at a big event, and he said, well, you know, I'm Jewish. And I said, so should I say I'm Norwegian Lutheran, Scandinavian Lutheran? How should I identify myself? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, that's a religion. So what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm really an Israeli. I'm directly related to Bibi Netanyahu. I said, so how many generations do you guys go back as an Israeli? And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, the state of Israel wasn't even created until 1948. So I'm just wondering, how many generations do you go back? Threw the guy for a loop. He didn't even know how to describe who he was anymore, because we identify with things that we don't even know the background to or the definition of. And an Israeli of Israel is, where did that family come from and what's your lineage to Israel? Because it was not a state of Israel until 1948. So how many generations do you have since 1948? People don't look at it logically, chronologically. They don't look at what's going on. From 1906 BC until 721 BC, the 10 tribes of the north were there, but then they were gone. And then the two tribes in the south went off over to, they were marched off. Only the wealthy ones and productive ones were marched off to Babylon. So here's the history. Now I'm going to tie in Iran with this. Iran was Persia, and Persians are believers. And the Armenians were the original Christians in the world. The first Christian nation was Armenia. And so those two nations did what? They went and helped those two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, get out of their situation in Babylon and come and be supported by the other believers in Armenia and Persia. People don't know this history. They think that Iranians are all Muslims. No, they're not. No, they're not. It's a Christian nation, and that's why when President Trump said, "Now we've given you freedom, but now you have to structure your government." That's what the same thing he's doing for Americans. He's not going to come structure your villages, towns, cities, counties. We've talked about this. He's not going to be able to go in and clean everything up for you guys, but he's cleaning everything up on top. We have more freedom today than we've had it at any time. More freedom in America to say what needs to be said, to communicate what needs to be communicated. We have that freedom. The same thing he's doing for Iran, the same thing he's waking the people that are in Israel up to, because they were lied to and said that this is ancient Israel. Well, it's not. It's not been Israel from 721 BC until 1948. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of years.
Yeah, fascinating. And how would you counter the narrative that President Trump is, a puppet to Bibi Netanyahu fighting Israel's wars? I mean, that's a very,
Absolutely
very
not.
popular
Absolutely
Yeah, of
not.
course.
Well, in fact, I was going to say, but we went over to Israel. Now, let me tell you, the Israel with Iran. Did you know that it was the Israelis that are the people from Israel, Israeli Defense Forces, are because they're the ones that come and train security people in America. So those are the only guys I've met. I don't know who else is involved in their military or anything. That's not something I've ever researched or been involved in. But here, I can tell you this. It wasn't us that took out the religious leaders of the IRGC. It wasn't us. And what the president said, he made it very clear. I'm supporting what they need to do. The Middle East needs to finally be dealt with in the way it needs to be dealt with, because they've got to work with their neighbors, just like he's helping us learn how to work with our neighbors. Nobody understood that Mexico, Cuba, Venezuela, nobody understood. All of this is since the Spanish-American War. Do you know the very day President mentioned Cuba, do you know what was out on the news when I looked up, because God said, go research San Juan Hill, Rough Riders. So I said, okay. And I've been talking about it on interviews, because since 1903, we've been leasing land for Guantanamo Base. 1903. That's quite a few years we've been leasing. Do you know what the first announcement was from CNN on the internet about Cuba? Is that Cuba wants the land back that we stole from them. We've never stolen any land from
Right.
Cuba. We never stole any land
Yeah.
from Mexico or Latin America. All of these things that are getting cleaned up, guys, are all connected. These are international deals that they kept feeling they could change in the future. The Treaty de Hidalgo, we gave them $15 million for the land in America. Do you know what I mean? We've been paying a lease in Guantanamo. We don't take any other land. We haven't had any other land in Cuba. But why does that headline come out right away? That America, did you know America has stolen land from Cuba and they want their land back? The protesters for the Panama Canal, they want their canal back. They never built a canal. We paid them $10 million for that land back in 1903. Paid $370 million to build it. Paid France 40 million, and they didn't build it. So why were we paying them 40 million when they didn't do anything? And Panama got 10 million. Nobody remembers these things, but 15 million in the Treaty de Hidalgo was for that land, and it was all paid back in the 1800s. In 1898, we were done with the Spanish-American War, and there's these roots that we're dealing with right now are because nobody ever fully dealt with all of it, because America was never free and never independent, and everybody who did have their structuring together took advantage of us. That's where we are to this point. Nobody realized about Israel. Nobody realized about Iran. Nobody realized these relationships. Nobody realized the agreements, the treaties, the agreements that were made, the money that was paid. Nobody knew, because it was never, everything was in secret. This is the first time the president has been open. He reads every executive order. The cabinet tells us exactly what each cabinet member is doing. And they're all praying warriors for us. This is the first time America's ever experienced this kind of transparency about what is going on anywhere. So I'm so grateful you're bringing these topics up, because it's all related. We don't understand what Israel is. We didn't understand why Iran, we think it's a war. There's people saying it's a war that I can't believe they're saying it's a war. We're not boots on ground. We're not doing that. We're doing a mission, but we're supporting Israel, and nobody is even talking about the fact that it's Israel that took out those IRGC leaders. Our guys knew what was happening. And President Trump said Israel is straightening this out, and we're in full support of them. And right before this, Bibi was in the White House with the president, and he told the press in the meeting with the press at the end, he said, all of you are reporting out there that I'm meeting with Bibi on Israel, and I've never even said the word Israel. But they weren't going to say what they were going to do about Iran. But he said, I've never said the word Israel. He turned right to Bibi and he said, have you heard me even say the word Israel while you've been here? And Bibi confirmed he never even heard it. But this is what people do, and then they believe the media.
Yeah, well, the media, as you've alluded to in the beginning and just now, with their A, false reports, B, designed to position Trump wrongly, and to create division within our movement. And they're very good at that. That's what they're doing. I wish people would just turn the stuff off. The other thing I wanted to mention, three things came up with you discussing that. You were saying these are almost like, it was almost like a secret that, and Trump's lifting the veil of centuries of not so readily available or undisclosed truths, and that's what's coming to the surface. And in a sense, like, people in our movement, especially those following Q, waiting for talk about the disclosure and the reveals and all that, and we certainly have that on other issues like Epstein release and all the things we've come to learn, all the horrors that have been taking place underneath our feet during all this time. But one of the reveals is what you've just stated, and these are real important. And so people need to take note of that. And then lastly, in comparison of wars, as you stated, this is not a war; it's an operation. And to contrast it very clearly for people, Cheney and Bush's wars went on for 2 decades, costing trillions and trillions of dollars, getting no benefit from it, and killing all kinds of lives, not only on our side, but their side, of course, as well, to no advantage whatsoever. And that is what's happening. So Trump is ending these endless wars, going for the jugular. And then during this period of time, I'd get your comment on this real quick. We'll move into the 43rd point in a moment. But you have, where was I going with this? Yes, you have countries being exposed right now. Trump's playing with everyone. No one's supporting us. France, NATO, England, blah, blah, blah. To me, that's an exposure move. All right. I mean, that we've funded NATO all these years. We've done all these things. The French would be speaking German if it wasn't for us. And here these people are saying, no, we don't want anything to do with your war, Trump. I find those optics quite interesting. And I think it's a maneuver that the president has brilliantly made. What's your comment about that?
The setup of the Strait of Hormuz. He was offering for our Navy ships to protect ships going through. He wanted to know who wanted to help in doing that. He was setting everything. It's a setup, and he's so brilliant at it. And so he had absolutely everything working out, that everyone is going to be protected and everything else. And who wanted to cooperate with it? Nobody. Not one nation. And so then, in fact, I think we've got a picture to look at on this. We've got the quote from the president is exactly about the Strait of Hormuz. And then I've got a Bloomberg chart as to who benefits from the oil that moves through the Strait of Hormuz. And you don't see the USA on there. And they said, oh, but Sheila, we need to be in NATO. Now, do you see anything straight about the Strait of Hormuz? And that's what the president's been laughing about. And he said, we'll make it straighter, but it needs to be the Strait of America. So he's even renamed it the Strait of America. But China's in real trouble. They can't get oil. And he's asking the president to help. And now all of a sudden, France is saying, well, they might give a little help. But it's crazy. But he's exposing all of them. We've been sending our troops, spending our money, helping all of these nations on the other side of the world. And when they need the help, we're still willing to help them. He was still going to have the Navy carriers along the side of him. He's going to transport them through, escort them through, make sure they got through safe. and they wouldn't even send anybody or anything. And so the president said, well, I'm not sending anybody either then. And so now these are the guys that are in trouble. Bloomberg came out with this within 24 hours. And the chart doesn't have us on it at all. We don't even need anything through the Strait of Hormuz. So now, if you want us to come and help, it'll be the Strait of America. If you want our ships, I think he's having fun with this. Because he's so brilliant.
Absolutely.
He knows how to reveal how these people have been operating with us, and every president and Congress has cooperated with this all of these years, 2 entire centuries plus. We've been cooperating with all this because we were taken over before self-governing, and they have used us, move the world headquarters of the world order to America, Charleston, South Carolina, in 1871, and we've been paying for everything globally ever since. And your quote, I forgot that one. Death to America. We hate America. Get America out of our
Mhm.
business. That's what they've been saying the whole time. So now America's backing away from being in your business. You figure out how to get through the Strait of Hormuz. You figure out how to get oil to your country. We don't have to leave our ships over there and help you.
This is the jugular on the geopolitical landscape without question. Everything's about energy, and you transport that energy through the Straits of Hormuz. And now China has to buy oil from who? Let's see, Venezuela, America. Oops. Okay, good. Well, let's put that money in our bank. It's fascinating. I have an image I'd like my producer to put up and throw another stick in the spinning spoke of the issue at hand here. Let's see if I can read it. All right, President Trump published this the other day. Uh, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this. So he's walking through this whole scenario. If you like me to continue reading it, Sheila, I will. But if you sort of get the gist of this, what's your comment about this? Because it's an interesting statement that, especially coming out of the gate, that we knew nothing about this, so to speak. Do you have any opinions about this post by the president? No
Absolutely, because
attacks
they
will
already
be made
blamed
by
us.
Israel.
They
Yeah.
blamed us for all of
So,
this. And
right.
Israel has been given the support to clean this area up and handle it, because they're being bombed all the time. I had no idea until now people are going into bomb shelters. Did you know that's been their life? They've been going into bomb shelters, getting notices at 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and they have to go back in the bomb shelter,
Right.
maybe for 15 or 20 minutes, and they can come back out and go back to bed. And then immediately they get an announcement. I did not know any of this was going on. Nothing has been transparent about any of these things. We've listened to the news media, and now we're getting the truth. I'm so grateful for the transparency available through our president, because we didn't go after their leaders, and we didn't go after their gas, and we aren't going after their oil. And at the same time he did this, just a couple of days ago, the same time he did this, did you know he's uncapping? We've had over 200 rigs in California capped for decades, and they wouldn't do anything. Ruined
Hmm.
families, ruined businesses, ruined lives up and down California. And now President Trump did the War Powers Act, and now we're going to start producing our own oil again in barrels of oil in California. He also announced, and I think this was at the State of the Union, 80 million barrels that he's doing to help financially for Maduro in Venezuela. So he's already purchased. And what does that do? Juan has gone through this amazing structure. It's like priming the pump, but he knows the oil industry. I don't. But the way he described it is, once Venezuela was stopped, you can't just reopen those wells and just go for it again. You have to go through an entire process. And now, is the equipment even going to be able to handle it when they start doing it again? And so that's why the president put Chevron and Enron in there. And why? Because they owe. They had damaged those areas, and now he's putting them back in. Now they're going to go contribute and clean up the things and get these pumps back working in Venezuela. There, there's a way to start a blessing cycle globally, and our president is doing it. He's showing you who's been the destructors, who's been the corruptors, who's been the infiltrators. He's sharing all of it. So then now you know who the puzzle pieces are, and you know how this is all coming together. This is so brilliant. And thank you for that, John. I didn't see that quote by the president. I thank you for that. That's
Yeah.
we're in a good
Well, thanks for
place.
your comment on that. We're in a very good place. You know, folks, there is no shortage of resources on planet Earth for all
Mm-mm.
nearly 8 billion of us. That's been a rigged game for profits, for the dark deep state, and
Mhm.
that's what is being unwound in part. No more shortage, and therefore, as you fast forward, it's going to take a little bit of time for all these maneuvers to settle in. And when they do, and they will, and sooner than we think, this price stability will also settle in. We are the largest producer of oil. We'll be probably the largest exporter of oil, and you'll
Mhm.
have price stability, which also speaks to no more inflation. You've
Mhm.
got human beings not panicking for energy. Then we can talk about Nikola Tesla and all these other things at another time. But before
Mhm.
we segue into point 43, are there any other images or any other aspects and things you'd like to bring to the surface before we segue into the second half of the broadcast? Is there anything else that we wanted to cover?
I don't think Michael has anything else. This was
Here's an
what the
image.
president had
Yeah.
done. They had no idea who they're dealing with. If people would just read Art of the Deal and Art of War, if you, it's exactly what
Art of War. Hmm.
it's exactly what's going on. It's exactly what's going on.
Hmm.
You don't go send your troops and ship all this equipment over, and you just don't do these things like they've been doing them. And lives. You mentioned all of the factors, and people forget about the lives. We're just starting now where people started to say, "Did you know it was 10 years ago, and these are the number of soldiers that were killed on this day?" And people are really starting to. And we haven't heard any of this for all the years that we've been over there, and we've been over
Hmm.
there since 9/11 in 2001.
Yep.
We've been over there. Amazing.
Hmm.
It's just amazing the
But
difference. And I just keep praying, thank you, Father, for showing them the difference, because there's so many people who don't understand. It's a war, and he opened a hornet's nest, and he never should have gone after those guys. And now they're going to be mad at us forever, and they're going to show up everywhere, and they're going to be killing Americans in the street. Excuse me? You see any of that? You don't
mhm,
think our people know what's going on? You don't think our people know where they are?
mhm.
You don't think our people know that they've been here and been trained, and nobody ever did anything and stopped them from being trained over here to take us out? Because that's what the anchor babies are. That's why he talked about it so much. That's how they've taken over nations. They send people here to have their babies here, and then they get activated when they're 21 to go and do all these things in your country. And that's why natural born, your parents had to be Americans. They had their generations be Americans, because you can be anything else in America. And that's the problem in our Congress right now that we also have to look at and deal with. But to be president, we got enough Americans whose generations have been in America to have somebody be a candidate for president, other than all these people that just came in from other countries to take over our country by becoming the president. That's what's been happening.
Yeah.
And yet people, and this is what's crazy. I heard someone tell me that natural born just means you're born in America. And because Rubio is born in America, Sheila Home is wrong. That means she's racist because he's Hispanic, because she doesn't want a Hispanic president. You guys, it's crazy. He was born in Miami, but his parents are both Cuban. And I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know their background, or whether they became citizens. Yes, he was born in Miami. I get it. But now they wanted to be
Hmm.
president here. But I don't know if you've seen all the pictures. Not only was he going to be the new Khomeini over Iran, or Shah of Iran, and now he's going to be the president of Cuba, and they've got all the uniforms to match. The poor guy was sitting in a chair one day, and now now Marco Rubio is somebody else every time you look at his internet, and now he's going to be the president of Cuba too. So maybe, and he would be good. He did a presentation the other day with the president, and he said the president already knows what I'm saying, but you can interpret if you want to. And then he did the whole thing in Spanish. I'd never heard anybody talk that fast in Spanish and not even take a breath and not wait for a translator. He's great at what he's doing. And he's a
Yeah,
good person as Secretary of State. He's done wonders. He doesn't qualify to be
yeah,
president. So I
Rubio,
was on a
Rubio.
program with three military guys, and you're not going to believe the guy read it. Do you know what AI has done? It is now interpreting our Constitution, and it says natural born means that you have to be born in America to be the president of the United States. He quoted that, and I could not believe it. But people were fighting me over it, saying the same thing for a week. And he said, it's right here on Grok. So AI has been fed information countering our Constitution. So now it's just not the liars in the
Wow.
media, it's the liars in Grok that are feeding the information to Grok to tell you that's not what your Constitution means. We got work to do.
Oh yeah, AI is an entirely different conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a case in point where it is pretty dangerous and unproductive. We're supposed to be seeking truth, and especially on a document as important as our Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's talk. Let's put up book one to my producer. Image book one, countering the 45-point plan to destroy America from within. This body of work, in part, reveals the structure required for current generations to secure and retain liberty and freedom and not allow enemies that we've been discussing here, both foreign and domestic, to destroy America for future generations. So last month, Sheila, we left off, I think you completed 45 and 44. I think you're going to tackle points 43 and perhaps more, depending on how time allows. I'm going to turn the airwaves over to you to walk us through point 43. And I just have a quick comment about Rubio. You got the perfect guy in the perfect place at the perfect time doing the perfect job, especially concerning Cuba. I mean, I'll be honest about this. I said it before. I was not always a fan of Marco Rubio many
Mm-hmm.
years. And of course, President had a lot of fun talking about little Marco back in those
Mm-hmm.
competitive days on the Republican platform. But boy, he's
Mm-hmm.
doing a great job without question. Quite frankly, I'm surprised and I'm thrilled. I'm very happy with what I see
Mm-hmm.
there. Especially taking on the Cuba issue. It's going to be the amount of celebrations that we're going to have, perhaps beginning May 17th, June 27th, certainly July 4th and 5th,
Mm-hmm.
and then thereafter. I think it marks, it doesn't mean all the battles are over. It doesn't mean we're not going to be looking at more disclosures and arrests and tribunals and all these other geopolitical reshuffling of the deck. This will go on for years. But I do believe, from a spiritual perspective as well as a political perspective, the tide is going to be shifting, and those are trigger dates to do it. And it's a great time. I hate to do the sound bites that everyone uses, but they're true. It is an incredible time to be alive. And I think everybody should look in the mirror instead of throwing darts at good people doing good things. And instead of buying into mainstream narrative BS, you know, or criticizing people within our movement, look in the mirror, folks. What have you been doing when the global governance was trying to overthrow America and the world? What were you doing? How will you answer to your children and grandchildren? So do look in the mirror and make sure you're doing something, even if it's a small issue or something larger, fighting on the right side of the issue of truth, because this is an extraordinary time. And that's my little commentary. But Sheila, walk us through point 43, set this up for us, and take over the airways from this point forward, please.
Well, it's going to be shocking to people. You're going to you're going to want to grab the arms of the chair if you've got them, and if you've got a chair with arms, you might want to go get in it and grab a hold, because we've been lied to from the very beginning. Point 43 is that we were taken over before self-governing. The high nobles in the Knights of Pythias were the ones who controlled absolutely everything. They were territorial governors before there were states. There were already counties formed. How were there counties formed before they even sent the Native Americans away? And they were forming all of these structures before we were even ability to self-govern. And all we had was horseback guys and a wagon. And now you see that the roads, a lot of the roads in Georgia, are because these were deer tracks, and then the wheel went through there for the wagons, and now those are the same areas where the streets are. So in Macon, Georgia, it was always taking us 45 minutes to go from one side of town to the other. Why? Because all of these things were at angles and hills, and nothing was everything's grid out in California and in Nebraska. And so I was used to that because that was developed later. So they were in control of absolutely everything. And so I just heard a comment on an interview somebody had, and they said that we have re-inhabited the Republic of America that they stole from us in the 1871 corporation. I'd like to laugh, but guys, it's not funny. It means they don't even understand where we've been. And what you were mentioning, John, about the banking system and et cetera, people don't understand. We had a national bank against our Constitution within a year and a half of George Washington being sworn in. And so he's sworn in 1789, and by 1791, Secretary of the Treasury Hamilton is setting up centralized banks all down the eastern seaboard. And they made a point. Where did they put the first one? In Philadelphia. What's in Philadelphia? Our Liberty Bell. They knew what they were doing. We thought we were setting all these amazing things up, and they had the opposite plan, and it was already unfolding. And now you know what they've done? Michael, if you can give us that picture of George Washington when he was being sworn in, do you see how he has the outstretched right hand? Do you know what his hand was on? On the Bible. Do you see a Bible? Do you see the podium? It's just an outstretched hand. So that's been taken away. Now, he was on the inside of the building. This is right out in the front of Federal Hall in New York. He was inside up in the second story. That's how many people were there for this to happen in 1789 in New York. And he was outstretched. Maybe it was on the railing where the Bible was, but there had to be a podium for the Bible to be there for him to do an outstretched hand to take his oath in his inauguration to help us. And so that happens in 1789. And in 1791, boom, everything starts changing. And it goes all the way down from New York to where? Savannah, Georgia. Why? Georgia's named after King George. So the control was still through Georgia, because that's why everybody was shocked when we talked about the summons and everything that happened in Quantico in one of our first interviews. That was done, and that's why they laugh about it. What do you mean the king of the Western Hemisphere? King George was the king of the Western Hemisphere. He was also His Excellency President of the United States. People never knew these things. It was in his bio. And so here he was running everything, and people think it's different. It never changed until the capitulation tour in 2017, when the Queen took off her glove, her little white glove on her left hand, put it over her wrist, and surrendered to the president. And then he inspected the guard. And to make it clear, he inspected the guard with Prince Charles also. That's when it all started to unravel. Do you see? Now we can look back and say, you know, he's really been doing a lot for us this whole time. We've been saying it, John, you've been saying the same things. You've been saying it since all of this started too. And none of this is new to us. But now we're actually seeing it unfold. And I'm really excited because we all needed to know this. And we've been living as though we've been this high city on a hill and we've got all this figured out. And President Jefferson said, you cannot do anything in America that the government holds a percent interest in. And they had the government holding a percent interest in the banks. Those were the centralized banks. It didn't start in 1910. It didn't start with the Federal Reserve. And people they only think of current history. They don't think of the previous history. And that's why it's kind of cute in here. I did a one-liner for you guys. You'll love it. We won Yorktown, but we didn't win the war. So we won one battle, and that's in 1781. So you think we were independent in 1776? The battle at Yorktown was the 1781. So here's the Native Americans who've lived on this land their whole time, and they watched what was happening, and they were informing, and the Pilgrims were already tight with them. And so if we can bring up the picture of the chief from the Cherokee. Guys, this is in the early 1800s. We hadn't even been a country 15 years yet. And the Cherokee are fighting all the way through all the new court system. This court system didn't exist until the people infiltrated from Europe And that's what the Faith Monument is about. We're going to get into that in a minute. The Faith Monument was about liberty, keeping an eye out, sitting on the head of the lion of England that he had skinned, and the right paw is up over his right shoulder. So that's what the Pilgrims came to do in 1620, and here we are in 1820. And they've already won the Supreme Court case. That's Justice Marshall. But President Andrew Jackson goes, well, if Justice Marshall thinks that you guys should stay and not go on the Trail of Tears, then let him enforce what he just did. That's not possible. Our Constitution says that it's only the president who can enforce a ruling, and that's what he does. He either enforces a ruling of the Supreme Court or he chooses not to. And President Andrew Jackson chose not to and said, let Marshall go ahead and enforce it, knowing that wasn't our Constitution. So what happened to that Cherokee chief that fought all of this all the way through on behalf of the Cherokee? There's a new law license from England that requires that you can't be without a law license and represent other people. That's still a law to this day. You can't represent in a courtroom in America because it's all British rule. Guys, all of this is way before we lost the Civil War. Okay. And so there he was. So what did they do to him? They sent him to prison like they did with the Native Americans that were with him, the pilgrims and missionaries and pastors who were with him, and anybody who felt that they shouldn't go on the Trail of Tears, anybody who spoke the truth went not just to a prison, guys, they went to hard labor camps. They were never heard from again. And that's how they were treated. So when people wonder now, there was a guy on Jaco's show interviewed, and he had a permit, bought a bunch of land, got a permit, built a beautiful home, had a lot of outbuildings. They started burning his outbuildings. They decided they're going to pull the permit. Now his home is going to be worth nothing. And they're threatening him all the time. And he goes, how can they take my permit? Guys, it's their game, it's their plan, and we haven't made sure our people that are true speakers and believers are in charge of what? That we're in charge of who gets the permits and everything else. That's why God had me put the whole chapter of Titus 1 in this new book. Because in Titus 1, it's that we're responsible to make sure 2 elders are in each position over what? Budgets. So that means in your little villages, you got to get rid of the corporation that has a trustee board. Every one of our structures has corporations. It's not just the federal government. So thinking that Trump's going to clean all this up, we have to clean it up. So here we are with these corporate structures, and we didn't understand that none of this was going to give us freedom. All of this was going to keep us controlled by who? By the banksters. And as Kash Patel says, the government gangsters. Because they're in this for the money. You're just finding it out now. They've been in this for the money from the very, very beginning. And that's what's really funny when people said, do you realize that the Boston Tea Party was over a 2%? A 2% on like a tax? And look what they did in Boston. So this isn't new. None of this is new. We're dealing with what it has always been.
A rebellion of 2% tax back in the day, and here we are at income tax brackets as high as 40% today. It is government gangsters, and it has been run by the Bank of England and the central bank system. And we're not going to get into this right now, but I'd just like to drop it in here. The QFS is a part of liberating us from that banking system. Same thing in the operation of the oil and the Straits of Hormuz and everything else that's going on. It all connects. And this is why, Sheila, in my opinion, July 4th this year isn't just an extra bigger barbecue with a few more fireworks. This is truly our liberation. And not only for America first and foremost, sure, but then we'll continue to play our role and free up the rest of humanity and help them free themselves at the same time. So it's extraordinary. And a lot of folks are focusing on, and it's okay, we've got a lot of different people looking at different things, and collectively it's all good. But all too often people focus on the drama, the negativity, the fear porn, and things in that space, when we should learn from history, which you've done such an incredible job at bringing that to the surface, and then relate those things to the events we see in the plan that we've been telling people to trust unfold. Would you like to continue down that trajectory on that you're
Well,
walking
the
us through?
faith and soldier monuments is probably all we're going to be able to get in today, but I would like to give the comparisons
Okay.
of that, because in the intro of me, you
Hmm.
show a picture at New York at the Reawaken tour with General Flynn.
Hmm.
And I did not know about the soldier monument until then. But for many years, I've said, guys, they knew by the time of the Civil War they weren't going to ever be able to turn this around because they had so overtaken our country. And so if we can
Hmm.
bring up the faith monument has four pillars, and then we'll bring up the soldier monument that they dedicated to Lincoln. The faith monument, this is how simple it is, the way you raise up a child and the way they should go, say never depart from it. And our government changed the title to the National Monument to the Forefathers, but that's faith on top, pointing to heaven, holding the Bible. Who does that remind you of? President Trump saying, there's my boss. And you think I'm the most popular one, but it's Jesus Christ. Um, so he was telling us this whole time. So what you see on these four pillars are four words. Morality, we look internally, so we know how to make decisions, and we make them with the Father. And people are asking me to this day, well, well, I want Sheila's opinion on this decision. No, you don't. You want the Lord in heaven to give you his opinion, because he's the only one that knows the end from the beginning. And so that's to look internally where Christ resides and to make good decisions. Next to morality is law. And law is simply equal justice, equal mercy. It's based on the Ten Commandments in the Bible. And the reason why is you get together and resolve it that day. If somebody injures somebody and the picture on the side of the monument shows guys sitting around a table and hearing both sides, well, what happened and what did you do? It's not 18 months to get to court, all the depositions, telling people what they have to say or not say in order to get their point across, whether it's truth or not. It's not that. You resolve situations between the people, and completely between the people. And when a Native American person was in trouble, they turned themselves in. And then here's the people from Europe getting off because they went and hired attorneys and made up all these stories. And that's what we have to this very day. Where is our justice? We don't have equal justice, equal mercy. Because if there's no mercy, and there's no mercy in a lot of court decisions right now, they're just using court decisions that they make that are bad to make other court decisions. They're using court statuses with other judges that aren't even legitimate judges and didn't take an oath to our Constitution. We're finding that all across our nation. Because number 13 of the
Wow.
points, avoid all loyalty oaths. That's why you have people who are not loyal to America running everything. So that's law. The third pillar is education. A mom's holding the Ten Commandments and the Bible, and she trains her children. And on the side panels, you see the grandparents on both sides. One side is with the Bible, the other is with the world. And that telling the children how to get through situations in their lives. And that unity in the family is what the 45 points tears apart. And just think of how many commercials you
Hmm.
hear. You're dressing more like your mom. Why do you want to do that? And why are you talk like your dad does? You're not that person. Go think about yourself and turn your life around. Quit being like your parents. They're doing everything to divide the family. Why? If you don't have a tight family unit, you don't have
It's
unity. And
over.
if you don't have unity, we divide and conquer really easy. And that's what they're doing. They have all the generations fighting each other. So if you're wanting to know what you can do in your own little community, let's start getting our families understanding we've been lied to, we've been deceived. Let's get together, operate together, and let's all speak the same truth, because that unity is what's going to start rebuilding America into what it needs to be. The next pillar, that's the fourth pillar, that's liberty. Because if you're operating in morality, this is on the faith monument, but this is a soldier monument. We're right there, Michael, so this is fine. In the faith monument, if you're operating in morality and law is equal justice and mercy, and you're educating the children on the truth of the Bible and the Ten Commandments, which matches with law and education, then you can be in liberty because everybody's operating in the same goals and the same plan for the same nation. And that's what we have not had. Even though they rededicated this to the Lord, they were immediately infiltrated. And that's what the Monroe Doctrine was. In 1820, he gave that speech to Congress. And did you know, I just love this. Do you know what President Trump has called what he's doing in Iraq, et cetera?
Go
and
ahead.
taking care of ICE and everything else. He's now operating under the Monroe Doctrine,
That's right.
which is
Yes.
the infiltration that will destroy your culture until you don't even recognize who you are or who you represent or what your nation is valuing. So that all happened.
I think
Um,
real
that
quick
happened.
interjection. I think our
Oh,
friends
uh-huh.
I'm sorry. I think our friends in New York come to my mind when you look at what they've allowed to take place by
Mhm,
voting this gentleman in,
mhm.
and this is a lot of that's been coming to my mind. Thinking of New York, this is sort of a template for everyone to watch what not to do, and to see what the enemy has done and how that
Mhm.
could permeate throughout this country. Of course, it's not going to happen, but that's the trajectory they were on, and New York's a prime example for it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I just had to get
Well,
that off my
remember when
chest.
the London mayor, remember, was a Muslim. And then before you knew it, most of the council
Mhm,
members, London, were what? They were all
mhm,
Muslim. And that's what
mhm,
happens. And I'm glad you're mentioning that because I didn't talk about the Quran about President Jefferson when he was fighting all of this. And they took him out in 1826 along with President Adams. And then 1831, they took out Monroe. Why? They had to do that because these were the guys who were fighting the tyranny. And the Liberty Man has his right foot on the statue on the Faith Monument, has his right foot on a big notebook, like a big book of tyranny, of what they lived
mm,
with. He's seated on the head of the Lion of England. And again, he's skinned, and the right shoulder has a limp paw because the lion has already been skinned. And on the side panel, you can see where he's got his foot on just a regular man, because that's all they are. They're nothing fancy. He's just a man, and he's got his foot on the neck of the man wearing a crown. Because who does he think he's in ruling over us? And so they
mhm.
had handled it with England, came to America. This was not even allowed to be erected until 1889, 100 years after Washington, after the Civil War. But now let's go back, Michael, to the Civil War monument, the soldier monument. The guys from the Civil War put this together as a concrete form. They did it, guys, in 4 years. They laid the cornerstone in 1865. Why? Because the Knights of Pythias took out Abraham Lincoln, and they dedicated this to Lincoln because they knew he was a God-fearing, Bible-reading man, and that he fought hard for everything. And the slave situation was already handled before the Civil War. But here we are, 250 years into a 500-year plan. The Pilgrims knew if they could keep this land dedicated to the Lord and live in liberty and freedom, by living by the Bible and 10 commandments and the laws, training your own children. You don't need other people training the children. The Republican Party started in 1854 because they did compulsory public school attendance. You had to send your children to public schools in 1850. So in 1854, they started the Republican Party, and Lincoln, who never won an election, won the presidential election for the Republican Party. And when he won the second time, they took him out. 42 days later, he was killed in Ford
Wow.
Theater. And this monument was built to his honor. Instead of seeing morality, do you know what that is? That's the Greek muse of history. You know what that is? That's someone with a writing instrument and a pad of paper. And what are they doing? They're writing what they see. They don't know what's behind it. They don't know why people are deciding that. And they've rewritten history ever since. Do you see? They've been operating by the muse of history. That's the muse of liberty up on the top. These are all Greek mythology issues of what they've got on this monument. And as you go to the next one, instead of law, they have a blue collar worker with some factory pieces. And he was in factory over in England. He comes to America to have this great life, and he's still in a factory, and he doesn't have any freedom at all. And so, they're all dejected people. When on their faces, you don't see anybody that's excited about being here. And then the next one, instead of educating the children, is prosperity, plenty. And she's holding a small little sheaf of wheat. What the heck? And wearing some nicer fabrics than the people who came to pioneer in America. But what? Where's the education? Where's the children? It's not on this monument. They knew. And then what's in the very front? I can tell you the lettering is too small to see for you. Do you know what it
Mhm.
says? It says Gettysburg, July 1, 2, 3, 1863. Why? The bloodiest battles were done July 1, 2, and 3, leading in to the Independence Day that they knew they never had in 1776. And at that
Wow.
point, they realized all they want to do is kill believers. And they'd already killed over 700,000 men. And the guys stopped and went home. So, what's the fourth guy? If we can show the bigger picture of the Civil War soldier, he's not the man of liberty. He's a Civil War soldier. Look at that face, hand down, just like the factory worker that I didn't picture on this. His hands down, wanton. He's got to hold his own musket, stay in uniform, ready to do what? Protect his own family. He's got cannonballs at his left foot. And you can't see his right foot in this picture, but it's on broken clay pots. They did all of this for assets. Who's got
Wow.
land? Who's going to get land? Who's got some assets? Who's got some? It wasn't anything that they came to America to have. We'd already lost it by the time of the Civil War. And it was so funny. I said this so many times, but I never saw this monument until I was on my way. I was at, right after the Georgia Guidestones went down in July of 22, we were in Virginia Beach. And then in August, they went to Batavia, New York. And on the way to Batavia, New York, I stopped in Gettysburg. And a family that was part of Reawaken has two little boys, and one of them loves wars. So I got all these tourists set up for them, set up a bed and breakfast. If you ever go to Gettysburg, guys, go to the Dobbin House, Dobbin. You will never have a meal like you will have, but go down in the tavern. Don't make reservations for upstairs to have pheasant under glass and all that kind of stuff. Guys, go down in the tavern, have an average meal, and then ask for the museum and walk up the back steps, and you'll see where they were hiding the slaves to get them out. And
Wow.
that's in Gettysburg. And across the street is the National Cemetery. And so I said, what am I going to do? And God said, go get a map and give them a tour. And so I would go to the gift shop, and the father was a lot taller than me, and he opens it up, and it looked like the Faith Monument. Guys, it's the exact formation. The four are sitting just exactly like they do on the Faith Monument. They're representing these same categories as on the Faith Monument, but they knew they were never going to have liberty and never going to have freedom. And I wanted to get to this point so we could understand about where we think we are right now with Iran and Israel and everything else,
Mhm.
and England. We've never been free. We've never had
Mhm.
liberty. We've always been controlled. Everything's been done to
Mhm.
us, and we've cooperated and compromised without even realizing it because we thought it was all good for us. I mean, I could spend 2 days with John and I at a table just explaining to you how they convince you to do these things on commercials on TV, and you do it, and you're causing your own demise. And they've done it
Absolutely.
to us from the very, very beginning. And that's why I'm so honored to be able to do this with you, John, to get this information out. Because it's not about 1871. It's not about whether we were a corporation. It's not about what any of these other presidents have done. We're sitting at a time that's the most miraculous in all of history, that since the Garden of Eden, this evil has never been dealt with. And I have to remind people all of the time, Satan was in the garden before Adam was formed. Just take that in. Satan was already here and told the people since they left the garden, Genesis 3:22, which is a basis of the Georgia Guidestones, erected on 3:22 of 1980. Why was that done? Lucifer, the Satanists, have been told all throughout all the centuries of history, they've been told that we were cursed, and that's why Adam left the garden. And all Father said was, now that they know good from evil, lest they eat of the tree of life and live forever. And there's a big pause and Selah. But Adam and Eve were so embarrassed, and Adam directed, and they went out of the garden. And so that's how big this battle is. That's how far back it goes. And none of the plans of evil have changed. This is the first time they've been dealt with in all of history, all the way to the core. And that's what our military is willing to do. So to keep wondering, when's it going to be martial law and when's this going to happen and why the military and everything else? That's not the focus for people who really want to turn this around. To turn it around is, what can I do today? And that's what I just saw a Benjamin Franklin quote today. What good thing can I do for this country today? What did Kennedy say? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask, what can you do for your country? And President Trump said today, back in 2017, at the inauguration with all the military around him, the power is being given back to you, the people. That's where we are.
Fantastic. And that is where we are. It's been a great segment and very inspiring. May 17th, June 27th, and July 4th are on the horizon. And this is an extraordinary time. So this episode balances the ticket of a lot of the narratives that were out there that do need to be addressed. But it's great to have this core fundamental history, truths revealed, and B, putting a light on the fact that we haven't been free. And you've clearly brought up a lot of key points there to that, to support that. And we don't know what it feels like to be free. We're going to feel that moving forward. You cut England out now, which, as you've indicated, with the Queen and then the King. All the other mechanical things of the Trump presiding over the bankruptcy of the 1871, neutering the Federal Reserve's funny money and its little sister cousin, the IRS, and all the things that we talk about in other programs. This balances the ticket from a historical and biblical perspective. So what's on the horizon for you? You have any speeches or places you're going that you'd like to bring the attention to the public, or not at this time?
Well, I'm doing some strategy meetings. There's a big summit of President Trump's team. We didn't even get through half of point 43 tonight, but I just want to give you guys the basics. And that's what we're doing. We're letting you know how serious this is of what they've done with us. But I do have a summit that I'm going to, just like I went to in May last year in DC. This time it's going to be in Dallas, Texas. But it's private invitation to a couple hundred people from around the country again. And I'm honored to be able to do that. I've not been signing up for conferences, but on May 8 and 9, I may be in Vegas with Mary Crowley. She's doing one. And I know it's Mother's Day weekend. When she told me that, I said, are you really going to do it on Mother's Day weekend? And she said, well, it's not on Sunday. I'm sorry, pollen has attacked in Georgia, and I'm trying because we had freezing weather. We've had it for a week in between, but the pollen came right back. It wasn't even 24 hours from the freezing and the rain and snow. We had with snow flurries again, but the pollen didn't take a break. It came right back. I thought it would cool down for a while. So sorry about that. But May 8 and 9, I may be in Vegas at Mary Crowley's event, but I'm trying not to do events. I'm trying to get the 3 books out this year because I didn't get any of the 3 out after this one came out last year. So
Mary, as you know, just returned from Israel. She was in bunkers for a period of time during the bombing and so forth. But this has been a very educational, inspirational, and informative episode. As always, we'll continue and wrap up point 43 next month. A special report with Sheila Home. Sheila's website's been displayed on the screen the entire time. Have a visit, hisbest.org. Avail yourself to all of her written material and continue to follow Sheila Home on the podcasting circuit and hear each and every month special report with Sheila Home. Thanks a lot, Sheila, for your incredible research. There isn't anyone listening. Let me rephrase that. Everyone listening to you learns something all the time. And that is so important, especially since you're revealing a lot of really masked and hidden truths for centuries at this particular time in history. So no accidents, no coincidences. Thank you very much, Sheila. Stay safe and God be with you. And I'll be right back in a moment. Thank you very much.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozni, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.
All right, Derek Johnson, March 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern, the Patriot Q&A hour in our private room. I'll be the host. No speeches, no agendas, no shows, no commercials. One solid hour to answer your questions with Derek Johnson. So come join us. Visit jmcbroadcasting.com and learn the entry pathway into these. Now, these are monthly. We launched it in January with Will Barney. We had Michael Jaco last month. We've got Derek Johnson coming up next week. And I believe Rob Cunningham will be in that seat for Patriot Q&A for the month of April. But come join us. Derek Johnson and I look forward to seeing you there to get your questions answered. This has been another, I always learn when Sheila speaks. I'm sure you do too. So share this show far and wide so others can learn as well. Follow Sheila's work at hisbest.org. And keep this in mind as the mainstream media and other entities try and divide us. Let's put that game to an end, because where we go one, we go all. Stay safe, everyone. We'll see you next month. A special report with Sheila Home, and may God be with you.